Hello my friends. Finally, here's the how to play Hell Nuke Phoon in PvP mode. Sorry that it took so long, but I was just too busy in the PvP season and in my real life. And to be honest, also a bit too lazy. But now I decided to upload every week at least one how to play video. Before I start the explanation, I do not force anyone to play like I say. I just tell you my own impressions and experience which I have learned in the universe season with this deck. If you have any questions or if you think that there is something missing, then feel free to write it in the comments. And a short feedback would be also very helpful. Anyway, let's start the video now. First of all, we start with the battlefield skin. Before the blessing skin exists, people played this deck on plasma or voyage. But blessing is the best what you can use for it. I have set my blessing at 13.5%. I don't have it at 15% because against flow decks I need hell dice quickly. And in the berserk rounds when night turns me anyway, I will have a higher chance to get the hell dice again. So my blessing is at 13.5%. You can decide for yourself if you want to set it that way or not. Next, the dice classes in your deck. I recommend that you have at least class 9 dice. So Hell class 9, Typhoon class 9 and Nuke class 9. Otherwise it can sometimes be problematic at the beginning to build up or survive correctly. But if you have class 8 dice and therefore you do not enough damage or your low pips hell dice do not work that often, I recommend to use growth instead of the mimic dice and to place the growth dice on the last slot of the blessing board instead of hell. Growth will help you to survive in the beginning and it is definitely enough to get you to Grand 3 or Master 1. Of course it is better if you have higher classes. But Nuke makes a real difference from class 11 onwards. So from class 7 till 10 Nuke is almost the same, and from class 11 till 15 it is again almost the same. By almost the same I mean that the difference in how many nukes it takes to kill a boss is so small that it is difficult to recognize. So the most important thing that you have to know is that with class 11 Nuke you need less nukes and that saves SP. How much critical damage you must have I cannot tell you exactly. I would recommend to have 1500% or more to manage the first 2 or 3 bosses good. But the critical damage is actually not that important. Anyway, now the gameplay. Of course it depends on which deck you are playing against. So I will start first with the basics and then I will talk later about specific decks. Your goal with this deck is simply to survive longer than your opponent. To survive longer you need more SP, and to have more SP you need to spend less SP. You will spend less SP when you summon less than your opponent. And to summon less than your opponent you must try not to merge that much. Because the basics, or better said my basics, are that I have always to try to use as less nukes as possible. In the first waves, so 1, 2, 3 and 4, I try not to merge any nukes. Again, the most important thing in this deck is to try to keep your summoner cost as low as possible. If your summoner cost is low, you can save more SP. And if you have more SP, you can summon more in an emergency or you can just survive longer than your opponent. Only if I see that the target is reaching the end of my lane, I use my nukes. Otherwise I try to save my SP and keep my summoner cost low. Every 5 waves you get significantly more SP. So wave 1 to 4 you get less SP than from wave 5 to 9. And from wave 10 to 14 you get again more SP and so on. This is also one of the reasons why I try to wait until wave 5 with my first nukes. Simply because you get more SP from then on. What you should also know is that you get less SP when the hell dice defeats the targets. That's why it is important to upgrade your nuke to max and always defeat the mini bosses in the corners of the lanes. Because that's where the range of the nukes is the largest. So, you get more SP every 5 waves and you get more SP when you defeat the targets with nukes or typhoon instead of hell. At the same time you should not merge too much, that your summoner costs stay low. Not merging too much is most important and one of the biggest mistakes. You must always pay attention to which mini boss you defeat. It is the best not to defeat the last mini boss that does not reach the end, because it does not reach the end. So it is unnecessary if you merge a nuke for it. If you always pay attention to it, you will only merge what you need to survive. Otherwise, this unnecessary nukes for targets or mini bosses which would not reach the end of your lane will only increase your dice costs, and if you do this the whole game, then you will simply lose. At the first 3 bosses you can save some nukes as well. Of course you have to consider your critical damage and your classes, but you can summon your Typhoon or copy it with Joker at certain times, so that your Typhoons have their third and strongest phase exactly when the boss is there. The problem is, since the bosses appear first on one side and switch always again, you have to watch where the spawn site is, if you wanna do it really 100% right. And then you have to adapt 1 second more if the boss do not spawn first on their own side. However, maybe it will still help some of you. Now let us talk about the decks which make your life as a Nuke player more difficult. There are decks with Flow, Sand, Metasis or Assassin, which are working good against Nuke. First we start with the Assassins, or better said Hyperzin. The win rate from Hyperzin against Nuke is about 50%. But if you have good reflexes and can copy your jokers fast enough or merge the nukes before the assassins hits you, the win rate for Hyperzin players drops to 30%. So it is not really dangerous for good nuke players. And that means the Hyperzin player will need more luck than you to beat you. Next we take a look at Metasis. Yin Yang Metasis can win against Nuke for sure. But if you think about how many Metasis you need and they must be timed perfectly, otherwise the nukes can just beat the mini boss and Metasis at once. And the fact that you cannot know that you will get enough red Metasis or the right bosses from it decreases the chance for a win again. And Yin Yang cannot survive that long. That is good for Nuke as well. But you can play this deck also with Solar. And with Solar you have more place to merge enough Metasis, and if your moon class is high enough you can survive longer than Yin Yang. So depending on the dice class, Solar Metasis can be better than Yin Yang Metasis and harder to defeat with Nuke. Because that, and depending on skill and classes, I would estimate that Yin Yang Metasis have a 50% win rate and Solar Metasis with class 12 moon have a 70% win rate against Nuke. Next, the Flow decks. Hell Phoon Flow or Solar Lunar Flow. Here it depends how high your classes and your critical damage is. With high classes and high critical damage like I have, it is like 50% win rate against Hell Phoon Flow. I need only 1-2 pip Hell dice and it is enough to outrun Hell Phoon Flow decks. So for my critical damage and classes it depends only to get fast enough a Hell dice or not. But with low classes I can imagine this deck is much harder to defeat with Nuke. So I would say it have about 80 or 70% win rate against low class and critical damage Nuke players. And against Solar Lunar Flow it is of course again a little bit harder. Just because it can run longer, it is not that easy to manage your SP until you can outrun this deck. But sometimes it can also happen that your opponent do not get a 7 pip moon or not enough flows, or you are very lucky with your Hell and Nuke dice. That's why I would say Solar Lunar Flow have a 70% win rate against high class nukes and a 90% win rate against low class nuke players. Now the last and at the same time the hardest decks which you can face if you play Nuke. Sand decks with the Cloud trait. Yin Yang Sand or Solar Lunar Sand are both almost not possible to win against if you are playing Nuke. Here it does not matter how high your classes or critical damage is. Sand is really the strongest deck if you want to beat Nuke players. The only problem for Yin Yang Sand is that it can happen that it get not enough sand or the right bosses. But Solar Sand you can say it has almost a 100% win rate against Nuke. Of course it depends also how much concentration and skill the Solar Sand player have. And even Solar Sand can be unlucky and do not get enough sands or something. But if they are playing right and with full concentration, you can say that Solar Sand players with class 12 moon or higher have a 95% win rate against Nuke players. And Yin Yang Sand have a 70% win rate. So if you are playing Nuke, you will need always much more luck than your opponent to win against these decks. And if you play against another legit Nuke player, it depends only who makes more mistakes or not. If both are doing everything right and have the same classes, it depends on luck to get enough Hell or Nukes. So it depends how your Blessing Battlefield skin will work for you. All other decks which I do not talk about and are not listed here are easy to beat just with outrunning it. That means you have to try to survive until the Berserk waves. Berserk waves start at wave 15. But you should always aim for wave 20 or 25 or 30. Depends which classes you have. I can run always between wave 20 and 30. I never reached more than wave 30 in the universe season, especially not since the new Berserk mode. However, between wave 20 or 30 should be enough to outrun almost every deck. One line at Berserk mode is mostly enough to destroy a moon deck. Now the summary. Blessing is the best skin what you can use for this deck and I set it at 13.5%. I recommend that you have at least class 9 dice. If you don't make enough damage with class 8 or lower, you can take growth instead of mimic dice with you to survive better. The nuke dice makes a real difference only with class 11 or higher. Try to keep your summoner cost as low as possible and save your SP. Every 5 waves you get more SP and you get less SP if the hell dice defeats the targets. Use the right typhoon times for the first 3 bosses to save your nukes. Try to merge only what you need to survive. So that's it. I think I said everything what is important to know. Don't forget that practice makes perfect, my friends. You will get more experience and find your own mistakes after each match. So learning by doing, otherwise you will never be better in something. I hope this explanation will help you to grind up the PvP ranks and get you legendary ores. If you wanna see another specific explanation about any other deck, feel free to write it in the comments. I will try to adapt to you and choose the next deck which you all wanna see. That's it from me. Good luck, have fun and enjoy the gravity season, my brothers and sisters. See you soon.
Where do we go from? Where do we go from here? No one can save us from keeping clear.